actually know if your homemade cheese is any good? Many beginners either never start because they don't think they can answer that, or they make a cheese but then they hesitate to eat it because they're too scared. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact process I use for cutting into a cheese and then tasting it, so you can know what a good cheese looks like and what to watch out for. Now, first up, let me introduce the cheese. World, this is a Lady Zella. Lady Zella, this is the world. If you've never heard of a Lady Zella before, that's because this is a cheese that I developed. It's a smooth, semi-hard, mild snacking cheese that is aged with a natural rind. I've waited to open this one longer than any of my other natural rind cheeses, almost exactly 2 years, which makes this all the more exciting, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I have broken the process of opening a cheese into 7 steps to make this whole process easier to follow along and understand. Now, the first part of opening a cheese is not opening a cheese. I know you're all gonna be like, oh, come on, Jennifer, get on with it already. But if you don't stop to do this part, you risk missing out on some key learning opportunities. In most cases, it's been months since you made the cheese. You have probably forgotten the date you made it, what ingredients you used, what the weather was like, any other special circumstances, when you originally planned to open it, and so on. So the first thing you need to do is check your notes. I've been logging this cheese in my rudimentary and chaotic notebook system, but if you want a cleaner, simpler way to keep track of your cheeses, I've put together a free cheese log that you can download and print off and use as much as you want. The link is below. Now, in this case, the Lady Zella is exactly 705 days old. It was made with 8 gallons of milk. I used clabber for the culture and just a teaspoon of rennet. The curds were cut small, then they were heated to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, and then lightly washed with some same temperature water. For the first couple months of aging this cheese, I washed the rind with a mixture of homemade spiced cranberry mead, dried herbs, salt, and a pinch of bee linens. Once it developed its sticky orange rind, I let it develop a regular rind, though my notes say that I did a light salt brine wash 3 months in. I'm not sure how many times I did that. But then for the next 20 months of its life, I just let it go, letting it develop a regular rind, periodically flipping the cheese and brushing off excess surface mold. I did not record the weight of this cheese, shame on me, but now let's check the weight. It weighs 6 pounds, 7 ounces. I imagine that it lost at least a pound of moisture during aging, which means that the flavor is going to have intensified and this cheese will be drier. One thing that's important to note is that it has been in a lot of different aging environments. It was in the cheeser, and then it got moved to the new cheese cave, and the temperatures have fluctuated, sometimes rather dramatically. For the majority of the last, 8 months or so, it has been aging at right around 47 degrees Fahrenheit, though recently I put it up to 53, so it just has changed a lot. The next step is gonna feel a little risky, but it is quite simple. And if you take the time to do it, your cheese making skills will improve dramatically. I want you to answer this question. What are you expecting? Take a minute and name what you are hoping for. Say it out loud if you have to. Write it down. What do you intend for this cheese to be like? What would disappoint you? Be specific. Now, naming expectations can feel silly because the cheese has already been made. It's not like we can change anything at this point. But when you pause to identify your expectations, you're setting the groundwork for a clear assessment, what you expected against what's actually in front of you. That gap, whatever it is where the learning happens. So what are my expectations for this Lady Zella? Well, because it was a washed curd cheese, I expect it to be fairly mild and sweet. It was high temperature too, so I think it will be a little bit drier, a little bit harder. The paste, I think, will be smooth, a little bit elastic. I don't think there will be holes in this. However, considering that it's been aged for almost 2 years, I won't be surprised if it's a little bit crumbly. Now, if there are cheese crystals in this, the little crunchy bits formed by the amino acids when the proteins were breaking down, I will be thrilled. I also expect that the exterior of the cheese paste will be quite dry, and I have never gotten a noticeable flavor improvement from the herbs and the mead in that wash that I do. I think that's more to establish a good rind before the other molds go on top of it. It doesn't really impart much of a flavor. Typically, maybe it will today. We'll see. What do I hope it's not? I hope it's not tacky, rubbery, bone dry, and rock hard. I hope there's not like a whole bunch of mold tunneling into the cheese. I hope it doesn't crumble into dust when I cut into it. So I have a lot of reservations, but I also know that this could be the best cheese that I have ever made. This element of surprise is what makes cutting into a cheese both daunting and exciting. Okay, so now we've arrived at the final step of the first section, and it's where we finally get hands-on, actually get to do something. First, I'm going to use a dry brush to remove all the loose bits, mold, the dust, anything that's been hanging out on the surface. I'm going to do this outside because I don't want all that mold in my house. And with brushing a hard rind cheese like this, there is no need to be precious. You can really go to town on it. As I brush, I'm feeling the cheese. I'm noticing if there are any weak spots or soft places, which could mean the cheese is beginning to decompose. The goal is a firm cheese with a smooth rind. Imperfections are totally fine, little divots here and there, but they should be superficial. Feels a little bit sticky, probably from the bee linens. There's like the white mold, but you just brush it all off. Now, I have been tending this cheese regularly, so I know it's healthy. It has a wonderfully stable rind, meaning that the stuff that I brush off every month or so is just blue and white surface mold. The base layer of mold on the rind has been mostly unchanging. And this cheese is rock solid. I've used it as a demo at my live workshops a number of times. It feels indestructible. Now, once the cheese is brushed, I have a decision to make. Am I going to clean it more? If I want, I can scrub it under cool running water to remove all the mold. I can cut off the whole outside rind with a knife. I can wipe it down with a mixture of water and white vinegar to halt the mold growth and kind of like cut that off. Or I can just cut into the cheese right now, leaving the rind intact. The thing you need to consider is it's like cutting into a piece of cake. As you slice through, the knife catches the frosting and drags it over the inside of the cake. Similarly, if a cheese is messy, the drag of the knife can pull all the grime and funky flavors from the exterior of the cheese into the paste. So I always try to determine the path of least resistance. What will require the least work? What will waste the least amount of cheese? And what will be the least messy? It's a bit of a guessing game. For this one, since the rind is solid and uniform and not too funky, and because it had the bee linen wash originally, my hunch is that it might actually be edible. So for now, I'm deciding that dry brushing it is enough. If it tastes terrible, I can always cut it off later. And here's one more thing. Don't get too hung up on losing the rind. I know it feels wasteful, but natural rinds age differently than vac-packed rinds or waxed rinds. The flavor you get in return is worth it, or it's supposed to be, we'll see. So now that we have cleaned the cheese, we're ready for the second part. This is where the action happens. But also, this is the part that makes me a little sad. After tending a cheese for months, I get attached to it. It's like my little cheese pet. Cutting into it is like killing it. I'm effectively terminating its ability to develop and evolve, and that makes me verklempt. But enough mushiness. This is the fun part. Let's do it. I use a chef knife, but you can use a cheese wire or an actual two-handed cheese knife, a machete, a table saw. I don't care, whatever you want. As a cut, I turn the cheese up on end. You could do it this way, but then my hand gets all knocked into the cheese. Sometimes if I'm feeling a little cautious, I'll grab a towel to do this. But normally I don't, and if this makes you nervous, just know, if I cut myself, I'll cut out the video and you will not see that, so don't worry about it. When I cut, right away I can tell if it's soft, semi-soft, or really hard. Oh, here we go. This always makes me nervous. Ideally, the knife will move through steadily. Oh, it's not terribly hard. It's cutting through. I mean, it's firm. It's very firm, but it's not impossible. And you got to be careful when you get to the bottom because the cheese will like split open and go flying onto the floor, and you don't want that. Now we are in the fifth step, the verdict. First up, what is the knee-jerk reaction? I smell cheese. I got hit in the face with cheese. It looks like it's crumbly, crumblier than I expected. It's very yellow. It looks good, but it looks old. It looks more like a cheddar. It's oh yay, and it's also, oh dear, this might be too old. Knee-jerk reaction. Now it is time to get down to business. First off, I smell the center, not the edge, because that's going to smell like the cheesecake, but I want to smell the inside part. What do I notice? It smells cool. I smell sweetness and butteriness. It smells like the earth. It's just cool. It's like I just walked into a cave. The coldness is what kind of surprises me, and this has been out at room temperature for a couple hours now. It is so yellow. It is golden yellow. Very creamy and bright. The paste closest to the rind is typically darker, and you can see that here, how that is darker along there, and then this is lighter. Another thing I ask myself is, are there any holes? Yes, there's actually a few holes in here, but not many. Not gassy holes, those holes right there. But there's a lot of smoothness too. Gas bubbles could mean that there's a problem, that something could have gone wrong during fermentation. Mechanical holes are more likely. They just mean that the curds were maybe stirred a little bit as they were being added into the mold, and therefore air got in and never pressed completely smoothly. There's nothing wrong with them. So the other thing is, what does the texture feel like? If I press on the paste, is there a give to it? If it yields a little bit, that tells me that there's just like a creaminess to it, but if it's really hard, then there's probably not much creaminess. This does have some give. Just a little bit of, you cut a slice and you're gonna test for elasticity. It actually cuts really nice. Try to cut it kind of thin. Bend the slice to see how quickly it snaps and crumbles. It definitely bends some, but then it also breaks. So if you bend it again, right here, it breaks. Now to check for graininess, take a little bit of the cheese and put it in your palm and smear it. I learned this technique from watching cheese judges do their work. If you do this, you can sometimes see if there is like a super creamy or if there's like a crumbling. Oof, I'm like spilling it on the floor. See, now it's melting down into butter. It actually feels really smooth. Interesting. And then of course there's the biggest question of all, do I want to eat it? If I want to eat it, that is a good sign. So now that I've made my initial observations, it is time to taste it. Typically I cut a thin slice that includes part of the rind because I want to taste into the center of the cheese. This is where it gets interesting. I want to test the center first where there is no rind influence to see what the cheese tastes like. Here we go. That's good. It's not as strong as I thought it was going to be. It definitely has flavor. There's a lot more than the younger ones. I do taste a little bit of graininess, even though it didn't show up when I smeared my palm. It's creamy. It has a little bit of a crumbliness to it. It has very nice mouthfeel. Okay, I'm getting closer to the edge. Okay, so right there's the rind. Right here's the edge. Definitely drier. There's a little bit of a spiciness to it, but it's not bad. I don't think that's the mold. I'm going to taste a bit of this rind. It's actually fine. Wow. Then I take from the rind to the center and try to taste all of that at once to see how that compares. Because when you pile up the outside, edge, and middle, it gives it a different composition. It's so good. There is an intensity to it that my younger cheeses do not have. While I'm eating the cheese, I am always searching for words to describe it. I'm always kind of bad at pulling out the words that I want. So I made myself this handy dandy cheat sheet that has all these different adjectives for tasting cheeses. I broke all the words into 5 categories: aroma, appearance, texture, flavor, and intensity. And then there's some guidelines for tasting cheese. My recommendation to you all and to myself is to choose 2 words from each section. I still feel like I'm struggling, but this is the best I got. The aroma is earthy. For the paste, I said it's a tight paste. The rind is thin. For the texture and mouthfeel, I said it's dense and fudgy and granular. For the flavor, I said toffee, robust. And for the finish, I said it's mellow. It was a pleasant aftertaste, even when you eat the rind. So good. The link for this is below if you want to grab it. The next thing, heat up a skillet and try to melt it. There is no right or wrong with this. I just want to see how it melts because that'll tell me how I can use it in cooking. Does it stretch when it melts? Does a lot of fat escape? And the other thing is melted cheese often tastes a little bit different from how it is when it's cool. So that just shows me its range. Oh yeah, it doesn't really, a little bit, but not much. It's not a ton of butter comes out. It melts and toasts up. Gets nice and crunchy, crumbly, I think. That's good. It's actually really toasty, like a crispy cheese. You can eat the rind, not a problem. Not a great stretching one. Then the final part of this step is to grab anybody that's nearby and ask them to come taste. Can you please come here, Nicholas? Because one thing that never fails to amaze me is how different everybody's taste buds are. Someone might like a cheese that I hate and vice versa. So it's always good to ask people what they think. Write down what they say, give them this cheat sheet and see what words they select. And if they don't like it, try not to be offended. I need you to taste this and tell me what you think.
Good.
What do you think it tastes like?
Actually, a little peppery.
Peppery? Any other thoughts about it? Here's some words for you. Sweet, caramel, butterscotch, mild, delicate, bland, sharp, pronounced, assertive, salty, tangy, acidic, tart, lemony, honey, toffee, maple, malty, briny, peppery, spicy, mustardy, mushroomy, bitter, nutty, metallic, rancid, gamey, flat, truffle, oniony.
The one word.
Which one?
Like savory.
Savory, okay.
Kind of like a cheddarish almost. but not quite.
Just popping in here to tell you, even though the cheese had been sitting out for a couple hours, I do not think it was fully warm. I mean, obviously if it smelled cold, it was cold. That granular texture, that's disappearing now. It is very creamy, very fudgy. So now I'm going to show you the one thing that separates cheesemakers who keep getting better from ones who keep making the same cheese over and over again. And it might be the single most important thing you can do to improve your cheese making. I want you to take a couple minutes to connect how the cheese turned out to what you did when you made it. Make an educated guess explaining what happened. Do some Googling, page through the cheese recipe book that you used, or watch the video again that showed you how to make this cheese. If you have questions, try to look them up. Jot down your notes, your answers, your observations. Ask yourself, if I were to make this cheese again, would I do anything different? And then write it down so that when you decide to make this cheese next week or maybe next year, you will remember what you want to do. You won't always be able to make the connection. Sometimes we end up with more questions than answers, but that's okay. This is all part of the process for building cheese making intuition. So for this cheese, I think that the bee linen wash established a rind at the start that allowed this to age for so long without having other molds permeate the cheese. Eventually, I will be doing more washed rinds and then letting them age longer because they seem so stable. One question I have is, if I establish a rind, let some of the mold develop, and then clean it up, pat it with a vinegar wash and wax it, I wonder how that would evolve. So this is what I mean. You just think through things, come up with questions, and then write it down. Now, once the cheese has been cut and evaluated, now you need to make a decision. Does this cheese need more time to age, or is it ready to just eat? Flavors and texture can change dramatically over time. So if you open a cheese and it's disappointingly bland, clean up the rind, vac pack it, and stick it back in the cave for another 4 months or 10 months or whatever. And then taste it again. It may have improved. Just be aware, some problems do not improve with age. A rubbery texture generally just becomes tacky. Bitterness does not fade. If those are your problems, aging them longer probably won't do much good. This Lady Zella is done. It has aged as long as it's going to. So let's talk about storage. If you're eating the cheese within a week or two, wrap the pieces in cheese paper and pop them into a Ziploc bag and just keep them in the fridge. For longer storage, you can vac pack your wedges. If the rind is funky, you may want to cut it off before you bag them because those rind molds can migrate in the bag and impact the rest of the cheese. Vac packed wedges will last months at fridge temp and they'll continue aging just more slowly. You can also store them in the cave. Whatever you're packaging up, label everything, everything, everything. Name, tracking number, date made, the weight. Future you will be grateful. Now, this cheese turned out beautifully, but if you end up with a cheese that isn't exactly what you hoped for, there are some ways that you might want to consider salvaging it. For example, I had a brie once that was too funky and salty, and so I trimmed off the rind, cubed up the interior part, froze it, and then I used that cheese as dairy bouillon concentrate when I was making cheese sauces. Another time I had a cheddar that was far too dry, so I just pulverized that and then used it in place of like Parmesan powder. Another time I had an Boris that was gross texture-wise, so I just sliced it up and fried it or melted it, baked it in the oven and made like cheese chips. So there's lots of options. Above all else, remember that perfection is not the goal. The goal is just to preserve milk that you can eat later. Every now and then, you'll get a cheese that just blows your socks off. But then there'll be times that you get total disasters that make you actually literally cry. But the vast majority of the time, the cheese will just be that. Cheese, it's edible, you eat it, it's good for you. If we learn something every time, we will always continue to improve. So slow down, pay attention, and learn from what you are doing. But here's one more thing that I didn't really talk about too much. What happens if you open a cheese and it is full of holes that you did not expect? Are they normal? Are they dangerous? How can you tell? This is a question that a lot of new cheesemakers struggle with. So this next video talks all about that. Watch that next, and I'll see you there. Happy milk slinging. Cheers.